Welcome back to the 750. I am your RJ Ochoa. He is your 7'5", two-time Super Bowl champion, college football Hall of Famer, fresh off of what I hope was a fantastic and a very Merry Christmas celebration. Tony Casillas, TC, what up?
Everything's going great. It was a tremendous holiday considering the circumstances. Got a chance to spend time with family. And, it was top it off with a Cowboys victory. I mean, it was a great holiday season so far.
Yeah. I know.
How about yourselves? How about you and your family?
Mine was great. Thank God.
Nice.
Had a great time. Family, only obviously my parents and I and my wife. And so we enjoyed it. I'm reaching the stage of life, Tony, where I'm doing the cliche. Okay, I'm gonna eat all of the treats through New Year's, and then it starts.
Resolution time, right?
Yeah. So that's how I'm living. My wife made a pecan pie for Christmas, and so
nice.
so I dove into that. Yeah, it was legit, and so everything has gone well. And you're right. And I've said this for years. If the Cowboys are relevant around Christmas time, they could be bad, but as long as they're relevant, it is so much more fun. In normal times, you're gathered around the table. Your family that you don't see all the time comes in, and I'm sure you specifically are asked, Tony, how do you think it's going to go? And it's a fun, different, mood than if it's just Christmas sucked for Jets fans. You know what I mean? Like, it's not the same. And so this has been a weird – the Cowboys have won 3 games in the month of December.
Yeah, it's something that we haven't really been able to celebrate. And to the point about I really found myself really getting excited about this game for some reason. I felt maybe it's just the homer in me that I wanted the Cowboys, and it was an NFC East rivalry game with the Eagles. I don't care who they play, but at least have a little bit more to it, some more energy. So I found myself really, actually cheering. In fact, I actually went and watched the game with my son and some friends, and I think I was the only Cowboy fan in the place. And also I forgot that it was actually at home. I mean, that's how kind of disconnected I've been most. But you know what? It was a tremendous game. I thought that it had a lot to it. I think the biggest question, RJ, is like, who was going to show up? Was it going to be a team that continued, after the last, winning this, going on a 2-game streak? And it was just, regardless, it doesn't matter what the circumstances were. I mean, regardless of what their records are. I mean, the fact that it felt the energy and they played hard. I think that fans kind of get lost in everything, the translation of what the record is, especially in a game like this. I just kind of felt the energy there. And I thought it was a tremendous win for them. And shout out to Mike McCarthy for keeping this thing intact.
I think that that's a good place to start. We found out when the second half started, Shannon Spake said on Fox, nobody had known that Mike McCarthy did the watermelon smashing thing again. And I want to start there specifically. I think it's amazing, Tony, that we're talking about the Dallas Cowboys and something that was so widely talked about. When they first did the watermelon smashing, it was this big, whatever, story. And nobody knew. Not a soul spoke about it until Shannon Spake said it on Fox. That's impressive to me, and says that this team is just kind of locked in the 4 walls that they're working in, whether that's AT&T Stadium, the team hotel, whatever, and they're not talking to anybody else. But I mean, I know you don't necessarily hate the watermelon thing, but some people think it's cheesy or lame, whatever. But it worked, and I mean, you've lived that life. I have to imagine if a coach does something that is maybe silly, but if the whole team loves, it's the coolest thing in the world.
Yeah, we used to have our special teams teams coach, Joe Avazano.
The great Joe Avazano.
Yeah, he was a tremendous savant when it comes to special teams. And God bless his soul. He passed away too early. But during his special teams meeting, we would meet an hour prior to the team meetings. And this is everyone, it doesn't matter who it was, the whole team. And it didn't matter, if it was, Troy Aikman or whoever. I mean, everyone was part of the special teams. It was kind of the prelude to what Jimmy was going to get up and tell us, the night before. And I just really, there always been these little things that he used to say. It only catches up to you when it catches up to you. And just all these different phrases and, anecdotes about what, we needed to do. And it just resonated. And it started there. And so while it may say a little cliche-ish and it may be a kind of quirky what coaches do, I mean, really, it doesn't really matter. It's in who's in that room. I mean,
Right.
it's like that's your family, and just like any business that you run, those are the people you care about, and those are the people that care about you, because everyone outside those walls, you're getting criticism, you get tired of hearing that, and whatever it does to resonate with some of these guys, because at a point where offensively, I mean, they did so many great things, and defensively now +9 after 3 games, which is unheard of considering how bad they were last year. I mean, there's something to that, because I always say this on our show, that as a player and being in the depths of being out of it, where all you're thinking about is the off season,
Right.
you really don't care.
Planning vacation.
I mean, you just don't. There's a lot to be said to that. You just mail it in like, okay, well, it's kind of like what we saw last night. We're doing our show on Tuesday. Watch Carolina play the Buffalo Bills, and you clearly saw a Patriots team that they didn't have anything going for them, which is unheard of. But yeah, I think what Mike McCarthy has done, and really it really just kind of pulled everything out of this team and really continued to them to battle. I mean, it says a lot for his character.
Yeah, I think again, I've never been there, but to me, we talked last week, and for anyone that didn't know, my wife and I moved this year. And you've moved 1,000 times, but it's like, when you're in the process of moving, and it's like, you cook a meal, whatever. It's like, we'll just eat on paper plates. You know what I mean? Like we don't need to get everything out.
You're like, hey, we're not going to be here much longer, right. So we're already got one foot out the door.
Yeah. So Mike McCarthy has said a few times that this team reminds him of his 2013 Green Bay Packers team. That Packers team, the worst it got for them. So they were 5-2 at one point. Then they lost 3 games in a row to drop to 5-5. Then they tied with the Minnesota Vikings to drop to 5-1. Then they lost again on Thanksgiving Day against the Detroit Lions. They were 5-6-1 entering the month of December. Not quite 3-9, which the Cowboys were staring in the face. But then they won 3 of their last 4 games. One of those games, incidentally, was against the Cowboys, the Matt Flynn game. And I'm not trying to take credit away from the great players that played for the Packers, but I do think there's something to McCarthy. We have talked before. We've said many times that one of the great qualities of Jason Garrett, in fact, maybe his greatest quality, was that those players never quit on him. They never did up until the very end, and that's why it was time to move on. And I got to give Mike McCarthy all the credit in the world, because there was all the reason in the world to quit this year. I mean, football reasons, Dak lost, Tyron lost, emotional reasons, the death of Marcus Paul. It should also be mentioned that Mike McCarthy was close with Kevin Green, who passed away, had him on his staff. I believe I heard Aaron Rodgers say on Pat McAfee show there was another Packers staffer that passed away earlier in the year. Mike McCarthy has had the year from hell. And so have, most people in the world. I realize that, and I know we're talking about a game, but nobody would have really blamed the Cowboys, Tony, for mailing it in. And for standing up and having some pride in themselves. I mean, this team has a little bit more of a backbone than I think a lot of people, including ourselves, give them credit for.
I think we do. I think we have to give them more credit. And, we've been very, critical, and rightly so this year. I mean, this team is, defensively especially, I mean, they've been just hammered. But, I think that Mike McCarthy, I think this whole thing started whenever a lot of the players came out and publicly, and,
right.
Jane Slater had a report from NFL Network that the coaches didn't know what they're over their head as far as what they were doing, and so it could have spun out of control. But whatever was said in those rooms, in that room, and I mean, kept it in the family. And I think that Mike McCarthy could have threw a lot of guys under the bus. He could have come out and said something and, been really critical. But it's a little different. I think when you're with a team like the Dallas Cowboys and the chain of control, the management when it starts from the bottom, I think that maybe you got to tap the brakes a little bit and not maybe do that. I mean, I think especially, and this may get a little off track, but Dwayne Haskins in Washington gets released, and I was talking to someone about this the other day. If that would have happened, if Jerry would have drafted his quarterback, the 18th pick, would he continue to give him chances, or would he have been like, handled it like Ron Rivera and the Washington Football Club. But to the point about Mike McCarthy, I think that was a testament of people, the guys that have respect for him, because he could have went the opposite direction.
Mm-hmm.
But I think with what, the way this team is set up with ownership and general manager and trickles down, maybe you just can't go out there and do that. But the players hung in there, offensively especially. I think offensively, when you look at the offensive line in which they are playing with a lot more continuity, they're not the best, but they're able to throw the ball down the field. I mean, Andy Dalton's getting ample time to throw the football, make plays. So defensively, that's another story. We talked about the takeaways, and there's some work that needs to be done. But, yeah, I think that Mike McCarthy, I think guys are buying into it and have respect. And that's all you want is respect. Just like the players want respect from the coaches need respect from the players.
I agree with that. I think, Mike McCarthy has every step of the way defended Mike Nolan, which didn't make a lot of sense. He has never put the onus on players. And again, Jason Garrett never did that up until the end. Remember last year after the Cowboys lost to the Minnesota Vikings on Sunday Night Football, he called out Tavon Austin for the mishandling of that punt return late in the game, and that really felt like a break point for him. Mike McCarthy, again, he's had every reason to be like, look, we have one of the worst defenses in the history of this sport. But he never said that. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like he always just kind of he is a guy who has been there, done that, and seems, internally capable of internalizing all of that and just kind of putting it on his shoulders. And so I think he deserves all the credit in the world. Are you sold on Mike Nolan? The Cowboys, I mean, if anybody that's watching just saw Tony's face, you can watch this episode on YouTube. But
did my reaction kind of give away my answer to that or what I'm about to say?
It should be said. And I'm not sold on Mike Nolan. Let me say that. But I think the guy deserves, like a fruit basket, because the team's first 9 games before the bye, they generated 7 turnovers. They went on their bye, got their crap together, and in the 6 games since have generated 14 turnovers. That is ridiculously impressive. Although it should be said that they have played some really crappy offenses and specifically some really crappy quarterbacks like the Cincinnati Bengals, like the 49ers, even the Eagles, and Jalen Hurts making his 3rd ever start in the NFL.
Yeah, well, is Jerry going to go back on his word? He's already made publicly a comment about there's going to be some changes on the defensive side of the ball, and some coaches are not going to be coming back. Is that going to be – and it seems to me that Mike Nolan's like 85, 90% out the door. Just because they turn this around, is that enough that Jerry's going to have to go back on his word and say, well, let me tap the brakes? When I watch their defense, I think they're out of sorts. I think that, when we watch – yes, they got all the takeaways, but the way they get gouged is they play really bad gap control. And I just don't like to see Demarcus Lawrence in a 2-point stand with his hand down. He just doesn't look comfortable. And look, he's played better. I mean, your 2 best defensive players on that team right now, I think, that are playing is Randy Gregory and Aldon Smith. Both those guys have missed, between them, probably missed almost a decade. Not that it's kind of exaggerating, but my point is that it's unsound. The schema is unsound with the players they have. And I don't know if that philosophy of Mike Nolan's going to work, but you got to give them credit. I mean, they have been having a knack to, create turnovers, and something that they couldn't do last year. They couldn't buy one. So that's going to be the question in the offseason. Now, if the Cowboys make it, if they get help from Washington, from the Eagles, which is kind of weird that you want help from them after you just beat them, and then they take care of business in New York. Then they make the playoffs. Then it's, I don't know. It just depends on what happens if you do, accidentally win a game in the postseason play, which is a far way ahead. But my point is
sure,
that's some consideration for jobs.
Well, I want to talk about Demarcus Lawrence, but before that, we are recording Tuesday morning. We started recording a little bit after Jerry Jones's Tuesday hit on 105.3 The Fan, and I wrote about this, so if you're listening, you can go get full details at blogontheboys.com. But Jerry did say that it's unlikely that Zach Martin will play this week against the New York Giants. He did say that there is hope if things go the Cowboys' way, if they win and if the Eagles win, there's hope that Zach Martin could play. For what it's worth, Zach Martin was last seen on Thanksgiving Day, which is November 26th, and the wild card game that the Cowboys would host, if this did work out for them, would be January 9th or 10th. So about a month and a half to get right for Zach Martin, so fingers crossed for him. You've been critical of Demarcus Lawrence generally at BTB. So we get a lot of tweets about this because I think your criticisms of Demarcus Lawrence are valid, but there are these people that think he sucks. And those are the people that we're generally talking to. I think my own personal opinion is I think he is the best defensive player on the Cowboys. I think he is a true powerful edge rusher. The war daddy that Jerry Jones used to say he wanted. I think, would it be nice if the sack numbers were there? Totally. Obviously that's not ideal that they're not, but he is leading the team in sacks for what it's worth. And I think he plays the run very well. I certainly, it's possible for him to play better. Like that's not, up for debate. But I think he's been the best defensive player all season long on aggregate. Do you think that's fair? Or do you think, I know you want to see him play better and I know you believe he's talented enough to, where do you stand on him across the whole season?
Well, there's Tony's level when it comes to a player of his magnitude, and I'm factoring in the contract, and I'm just the expectation. As a player in the National Football League, the guy's a really good player, without a doubt.
Right.
But I think that you have to – the reality of it is when you watch this game, and I try to watch as much as I can, and I for instance – against someone like Jalen Hurts, which is a rookie, first of all, you go in like the dude's a rookie. You don't give him respect. He's got to earn it. I don't care who it is. If he runs a 4.5 or 4.4.
Yeah, if he went to a great school like A&M or some other place like Oklahoma.
Exactly. But, when you go to Harvard of the Southwest, when you're very intelligent, but I watch, playing the zone read, and sometimes, that's hard, Guys aren't used to playing the zone read, they're either going to take the quarterback or the running back. You're on an island. Look, I guess that I have respect for D-Law. Sure. I think he's a tremendous talent, and I look for him as like, there's got to be one dude that I look to and point, dude, you're the guy that needs to make the play.
Yeah.
I'm in the huddle. I'm like, hey, Demarcus, you're the guy. Okay, I don't care. You got to knock down a brick wall. You're the guy that's got to make. You have got to fuel the fire on this. And so maybe that's my criticism. And I don't know if that's maybe that's just me because I know his capability. But sometimes guys that have that label have got to fight through the fact that look, it's not looking good. But man, I got to have that one play. And yes, he made great plays. So maybe it's a little unrealistic. Maybe that's my criticism, but that's because I have a lot of respect for him and his expectation as far as getting paid the contract. You have to be a superstar, and you have to really turn that button on whenever you need to make a big play. People are relying on that.
I think you can tell me if I'm incorrect. I don't want to speak for you at all, but I think if there's one player on the defensive side of the ball that it's fair, using that word loosely, that it's fair to have unrealistic expectations for, it's Demarcus Lawrence, right? Because he is the most talented player in terms of just God-given talent. He does have the biggest contract. So like if you're gonna say, well, I know I'm not being realistic, but that guy has to do it, Demarcus Lawrence is the guy that kind of fits that archetype. And I think in a similar way, I think he and Amari Cooper are kind of the same guy in that sense. Like they both have these really great moments, but they both have these games that they're just a little bit more quiet in. And so that's what stirs up the criticism. That's what stirs up people kind of wondering who they are, given the high price, given the big contracts, given the notoriety, given the talent, because they are both incredibly talented.
Yeah. And look, I think that's a narrative in the National Football League. Guys are getting paid a hell of a lot of money, and maybe where they deserve. Look, you got to get it while you can. Mm-hmm. It's a young man's sport. But, to really defend Demarcus Lawrence, you got to look the interior part of the line. You got to look at the defensive tackles, the gap control, just getting washed out. Demarcus can't make – he can't go sideline to sideline and make big plays up the field. And he can't – sometimes you can't really have an impact on that, just, unless you're just going upfield and creating havoc. And, to me, I think they're vulnerable there. Especially in Neville Gallimore, as much as he's made big plays, I think when you look at he's a rookie. I mean,
Right.
they're suffering there. They lost Tristan Hill, but I didn't even want to mention the guy's name, and I know that you know who I'm going to mention. That's your boy. Um, when I watch him play, I watched the games last night. I watched the Buffalo Bills, and I watched these linebackers, or even on New England. They scrape off and they hit guys coming off the second level. They hit them right in the mouth, and it doesn't matter. But whenever you engage into a block and you can't get off and you're 10 yards down the field, you got to help each other out. It's not going to be a perfect world. Guys are going to get off to the second level, so you got to help each other out. And I think in Demarcus Lawrence defense, he's not getting that help where he needs to really help him become that playmaker.
So Tony is talking about a certain linebacker. He has a brand, a few of them. And I think a few weeks ago, when we had Darren Woodson on the network and on our shows, I playfully asked you, I asked you for a question. You said, ask him why he always cussed us out. And I mean, I don't want to speak for Woody, but he cussed you out because you were accountable to one another, right? Like what you did,
because you cared about each other, right? You knew that that you were going to respond, and that was just part of it,
right? And you not doing your job could really leave him, vulnerable or whoever. I mean,
vice versa,
right? And so to the point that you're kind of making here, Demarcus Lawrence can be one of the best edge rushers in the NFL, which I believe he is. It sounds like you agree with. But if he is on an island where he has an Achilles heel floating in the middle of his defense, he can only do so much. And that's just the reality of football and 11 men and a team sport and whatever. And Jalen wasn't like the worst player ever against the Eagles. And he's had some solid moments. But, yeah, that's the dude that needs to, show off. And I mean, we've beaten that horse, you know what I mean, a million times.
Yeah, and then Sean Lee, you can't expect him to play like he did 5 years ago. And he's a very smart player. But look, I mean, he probably, Leighton Vander Esch is not playing, so he's a smart dude. He's going to be where you need to, where you need your responsibilities. But I like even Sean Lee on the sidelines. He's over there like giving each other these guys an earful.
Right.
Like get your, whatever you need to do. I mean, it hurts me to watch them give up big plays the way they did. But look, I'm going to harp on the fact that they shut them down the second half.
Yeah.
They scored 17 points the first half, and they got help the second half. So I'll pat them on the back for that. But I mean, it's kind of hard to complain when you win and you're on a winning streak, especially for this team. I don't care who it is, and considering what they suffered this year.
Yeah.
And I guess you got to celebrate. But I mean, the thing about it is that there's, when you criticize, the points that you criticize have got to be valid. And everything that we talked about in the last 10 minutes when it comes to defense is something you can blatantly see, RJ.
Yeah, I mean, and the defense becomes a bigger issue when your offense is alive, right?
Putting up a lot of points and
right.
Playing well. I mean, yeah, and absolutely.
Kudos to them. My last point on the defense before we get to offense, Dick LeBeau is maybe my favorite defensive coordinator of all time.
Yeah.
And Hall of Fame player, by the way, in his own right. And he had, I once read, he had a rule of thumb. I don't know if you ever heard this before. 17 points. That was his mantra. If as a defense, we can hold you to 17 points, I trust that our offense can beat that. And the Cowboys held Philadelphia to 17 points, and they won.
Yeah, and that's the goals you put on every week. You go in there, and on a Wednesday before you get the game plan, you put your list of goals up there, whatever,
Back on the chalkboard.
Yes, I mean, you have your goal. I'm serious. I mean, yeah, the whiteboard, not chalkboard, whiteboard. I think, you could actually erase it. Or I didn't have my my iPad, that they have now. But so, those are goals you put up, as far as stopping their average per carry. And then the big point is points.
Right.
You can win like 5 or, 4 out of 8 or 7 categories, and especially turnovers.
Right.
I mean, if you can win the takeaway battle, I mean, and do what the Cowboys have done, you got about an 85, 90% chance of winning. If you get beat, then you got really big issues. Offensively, you're not getting help, and that's certainly what's the trend right now for this team.
Right. The Cowboys have won the turnover battle in these 3 games that they've won, 3 in a row. Yeah. How many turnovers would you guess off the top of your head the Cowboys offense has had in the last 3 games?
I think it's 12,
No,
11.
I'm talking just like how many times the offense has given the ball up in the last three games.
Well, I know it's +9, so I'm going to say 1.
That is some good mental math by you, TC.
Yeah, that was a great guess.
And it was
I'm cheating. I'm looking behind you. You have it on.
It was this most recent game when Andy Dalton threw that interception, trying to do a little bit too much. But yeah, outside of that, the Cowboys defense has forced 10 turnovers these last 3 games and have only seen their offense give it up once. So if you're +9 and the turnover differential, it's going to work out for you more often than not. Speaking of Andy Dalton, you mentioned the zone read. Kellen Moore called the zone read for Andy Dalton at one point in this game. But like all jokes aside, he has a level of mobility to him. That's a factor that should be utilized more.
Yeah, and I think Kellen Moore is really he's really showed that he's a good play caller, and I don't know if he's going to be back next year. I don't know if he's going to get the head coaching job at Boise State. Best of luck to him, because I think that would be a great place for him to start. But yeah, I think that the play calling, when you look at this offense, and for defensively, you got to keep yourself guessing. And once you're able to establish that and just out of the norm and not and do things like that, then that's a big difference in the game as far as extending drives. And because all of a sudden, you have to start thinking a lot more. And Jim Schwartz, he's the kind of guy that likes to come after you. And look, I thought in this game that there would be a lot of yards to be had, because this team, when we talk about the Eagles they played last week, gave up a ton of yards to the pass. And they took advantage of that. But that's some of the play calling that Kellen Moore was able to come up with.
It's so strange how Kellen Moore, and I do think it would be a really great story for college football if he did wind up back at Boise. It would suck to see him go. And that's another thing we get heated at BTB for is, there are people that think he sucks. Do I believe he's the best offensive coordinator in the NFL? No. However, he is extremely young. He is obviously incredibly bright-minded, and he certainly has a knack for identifying offensive concepts that work. However, his flaw lately has been in the red zone. The Cowboys scored these big touchdowns, and they had the Michael Gallup touchdown at the end of the first half in the red zone. But Kellen Moore does I think get a little too cute in the red zone.
Yeah, but I think that's a lot to do with not being able to run the ball when
that's
you get
fair.
in the red zone. And it's the field it shrinks, and there's not as much space, and there's only so many things that you can do and get fancy. I mean, when you get in the red zone, you got to be able to play a little power football, and just try to force that and make people respect that. And as much as the good things that the offense has done, I mean, running the ball in the red zone is not something they've been able to.
What did you think of Zeke in this? I
was happy. I was really happy for Zeke. I mean, look, everyone's it goes around on social media and and all the fans like, hey, dude, we need to get rid of Zeke, and he's not the guy. But when I saw him feed me when he made that big, was a 21-yard run, the longest run he made all year long. I was happy for the dude, because I don't know, he may be battling injuries. I mean, he's another guy that we label the guy that be Superman. He's got to carry the team on offense, and to a certain extent, it's fair. I mean, but I was glad. I thought he looked like he had a little bit more in the tank. I thought maybe he looked like he was more healthy. He just looked like he was happier, and I think he played harder. I don't know if that's because of Tony Pollard or the fact that he was feeling better health-wise.
He had a week off, yeah.
Yeah, but you could tell that he had a little bit left. He had a little bit more spark.
So on Zeke, because I think this is interesting. By the way, Zeke is going to lead the team in rushing for 5 straight years now. This is his 5th year in the NFL. He's going to obviously be the team's leading rusher on the year. Do you know the last running back who played for the Dallas Cowboys that led the team in rushing in 5 straight seasons?
Led the team in rushing?
Yeah, so was the Cowboys team leading rusher for 5 straight years?
Well, I mean, we're going way back, aren't we?
So, I mean, there have been a couple of guys who have done it at least 3 years in a row.
Emmett.
Emmett is the answer.
Yeah.
Emmett led the team in rushing, obviously.
Like this was a trick question.
Right. But my point is, Julius Jones led the team in rushing 3 years in a row. Marion Barber did it 3 years in a row. DeMarco Murray did it 4 years in a row, and Zeke is now about to do it 5 years in a row. Another, just along these same lines, it looks like, I mean, barring anything wild, Amari Cooper is going to lead the team in receiving for 3 years in a row. His 3 years, obviously, with the team. He's crossed 1,000 yards in his 2 full seasons with the team. Do you know the last receiver that led the team in receiving at least 3 years in a row?
Oh, gosh. I'm going to go with
it's pretty easy, actually.
Jason Witten, Miles Austin, or Michael Irvin?
Dez did it 3 years in a row.
Dez, gosh, yeah.
From 2012 to 2014, his breakout years. But before that, Miles never did it 3 years in a row. Witten never did it even 2 years in a row. He did lead the team in receiving in 2011. But outside of Dez, the last person to do it 3 years in a row was Terrell Owens, his first 3 seasons with the team. And before that, it was Michael Irvin. So
that's a great question.
It's just, I mean, it's kind of obvious, but it is kind of, it shows I don't want to say the lack of consistency, but there's just been some levels of turnover. By the way, Zeke Elliott did have his most yards in the game, if you are measuring that. And I do think it's worth mentioning that his only 2 games, and I know the bar is a little bit low here, his only 2 games crossing over 100 yards were in Minnesota and against Philadelphia on Sunday. The thing that those 2 games have in common for Zeke specifically is that he had the week off before. Against Minnesota, the Cowboys were coming off their bye, so obviously had the week off. And then this past week, he didn't play against San Francisco. So, I mean, the rest clearly has done him well is all I'm saying. So,
and I saw the statistic too, RJ, as far as broken tackles. I believe he led all running backs. I believe he had 11 in one game. So that's an indication that maybe he's feeling better. I think that I think when you look at the receiving core, Michael Gallup, I don't know what the dude ate for breakfast or pregame meal, but that dude was phenomenal. I mean, he was some of the catches, and then with the Xbox video,
God, that was so cool.
Isn't that sick? I play Xbox, but I can just see that it looks like, I had your controller in your hand or something. And my son, he loves it. Obviously he's a 20-year-old and he's a gamer. But that was phenomenal. And Amari Cooper, man, oh, my gosh, the moves the ankles he broke in that game, that one, it's like Amari, man, that's dirty.
Amari is like there's something – there's like badass receiver, right? Like there's there are a lot of them, and obviously in the NFL. But there's something like Amari is like the smoothest jazz you've ever heard in your life. Like where
he's
whole
like
band...
some smooth tequila or whiskey.
Oh,
man.
yeah.
Like, you drink it and you're like, oh, man, that's just smooth. And, let it marinate and you can sip on it for a long time. But, yeah, he's amazing.
It was just a really fun game.
And not to mention, to our boy CeeDee Lamb. I mean, that guy.
Oh, God. I mean,
it was just – and Andy Dalton – look, there's a reason why that they brought him in, and that's the prime reason why what we saw. And I don't know what's going to happen with him. I don't know if he's shown enough. I think that maybe, and I was talking to my son about this last night, when you look at the Washington Football Club, you think about them leading a quarterback, and I don't know what Alex Smith, what his situation is, what they're going to do as far as a quarterback. But
right.
I would think that Andy Dalton, that may be a place he may end up, because I think the guy has a little left. I mean, I think he's got something to go with that, to what what he's done over the last 4 games.
So I'm glad you brought this up. I think this is a good topic to end on. Mm-hmm. I wrote 1,000 words about this on Tuesday. The Dallas Cowboys, in games without Dak Prescott this year, have won 4 games. All right. And that is 3 more than they won without Tony Romo in 2015. In 2015, the Cowboys went 1-11 without Tony Romo, which is really an embarrassment to that coaching staff that they were that inept.
I'm trying to think of who their backup quarterback was. That Brandon Whedon? Was that the Brandon Whedon time? No,
it was. It started off as Brandon Whedon, but they traded for Matt Castle when that happened, and then he got his shot. He actually is the only quarterback that won a game, and then Kellen Moore got a shot later on himself.
Yeah.
But so, I mean, Andy Dalton has, and we've talked about this. His first 2 starts, I'm sort of willing to give him a pass on. The first one was on Monday Night Football against the Arizona Cardinals. Everybody was still kind of dealing with the aftershock of Dak getting hurt, and we also would go on to find out that the Cardinals were a really good team and specifically a really good offense. They may or may not make the playoffs this week. We'll see. But the point is the Cowboys ran into a buzzsaw on Monday Night Football. That wasn't Andy Dalton's fault. The next week, the Cowboys go to Washington without Zach Martin and go up against maybe the best defensive front in the NFL. Andy Dalton gets hurt. Okay, so like I'm kind of willing to excuse these two games. But so Andy Dalton then has a concussion, then tests positive for COVID. Then everything is terrible. The Cowboys lose against Philly and Pittsburgh, and they go on their bye. Andy Dalton gets right. Since then, the Cowboys beat the Minnesota Vikings. All the hype. Everyone's talking RJ and Tony. Maybe this team wins the NFC East, whatever. Tragedy strikes. Short week. The Cowboys barely practice. They get housed by Washington on Thanksgiving. Then almost 2 weeks later, they lost to the Ravens, just as the Ravens found their offensive form again that we've seen them riding. Since then,
that's a scary team right now.
Right. And so
Ravens, yeah.
You can kind of like, I hate to call them excuses, but you can kind of excuse away Andy Dalton's losses. And I know that the wins are against the Vikings, the Bengals, the Niners, and the Eagles, 4 really bad teams. But still, Andy Dalton is 4-4 as the starting quarterback of the Dallas Cowboys. If your backup goes 500, like that's kind of like ideal backup performance. And what's more, and I mean, not to take anything from Andy, but I give a lot of credit for this to Mike McCarthy, because prior to Andy Dalton, the Cowboys treated QB2 like this whatever position, which is kind of dumb when you really think about it. I mean, the vice president is a tragedy away from becoming the most important person in the world. You know what I mean? And
right.
your QB2 is a tragedy away from becoming the most important player on your team. And think about the last 3 years, the Cowboys entrusted such an important position to an undrafted free agent in Cooper Rush that, had no NFL experience. And so if this situation that the Cowboys are in had happened last year, they would have been extremely unprepared for this. You know what I mean? And I know that Andy got hurt himself and the Cowboys fell into that trap, but like they planned for this. And they're, whether they win the NFC East or not, they're going to play all 16 games mathematically alive. And that is an impressive accomplishment. And a lot of it is because of the insurance policy they bought themselves in Andy Dalton.
And they had to cater to his weaknesses and his strengths. And, obviously with Dak, he had more of a mobile quarterback than play action, make plays with the legs. And, Andy Dalton, I think he had to sift his way through, where, look at the offensive line was not very good. They couldn't run the football. And so he had to sit back and throw it a lot. So I think they've kind of catered and kind of found his stride, if you will. And I think that he's really been efficient. He threw for 377 yards in the last game and put up some great numbers. And I don't care who you play. I mean, you still have to have a quarterback. And we've seen the Ben DiNucci's, and that's unfair to that dude. But I mean, look where they're at now. And as you mentioned, 4-4. I mean, you'll take that all day long.
Andy Dalton might be an NFC East champion. By the way, if you rank or if you sort the NFC East quarterbacks by number of wins, Andy Dalton is tied for the most wins by a starting quarterback in the NFC East. Andy Dalton, Alex Smith, and Daniel Jones each have started and won 4 games this year for NFC East teams.
That's crazy. And the fact that all the games they're playing, I mean, a majority of the games have a lot of implications, which is going to be a tremendous week, the last week in the National Football League.
Well, so that brings us to prediction time, Tony. I think you and I both think the Cowboys are going to go beat Jason Garrett's Giants. Did you know? I saw this. I couldn't believe this. Jason Garrett, and I know he wasn't there last week, or 2 weeks ago, rather. Jason Garrett's New York Giants offense has gone, I might be butchering this, but I believe 3 straight games scoring 3 or less points in the first half.
That doesn't surprise me. And it's the Giants. And I'm not trying to, just to really just rag on to Jason, but considering the offense and what they have, I mean, that doesn't surprise me. And I think, look, you gotta look with your personnel. I look at this game. I know the Giants. They're gonna play the Cowboys tough, and vice versa. It's on the road, and it should be. It should be a game that there's, you play the villain, and that would be the New York Giants because of their season. And look, the Cowboys got to win the game first before even, and they get to watch the Sunday night game, which I think is great. So you take care of your business, you beat the Giants, and then hopefully you'll get help from Washington. But I think Dallas again. You know, I think I may have picked them last week. I don't know if I did or not.
You did.
I did.
You were feeling merry and bright. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. It was the holiday season. So I'm still in the holiday season. It's going to be it's going to be a better New Year in 2021. But I can't think of a better way of. Well, I mean, it'll be a new year because it'll be 2021 when they play, right?
Right.
So I think the Cowboys win. I think again, I think it's going to be a game. The Cowboys continue to get takeaways. It's going to come down to they're going to give up some plays on defensively on that side of the ball. But I think they'll continue to really, really – and look, New York's got a good front four. They got some ballers there. But I think Dallas will win. I think this will be a game, again, if they can put up some points. Maybe the Giants can go into that quit mode. And, you know, I don't think if you're Dallas, you can't rely on that because you got to finish games. But I'm picking the Cowboys to win.
Okay, so I've got the Cowboys winning as well. Yes or no, would you agree that a Cowboys win is the easiest thing to come this week? Of the two things the Cowboys need, that's the easier proposition.
Yes, I would think so because you can control that.
Right.
Yeah.
So we both think that happens. Eagles or Washington? Who do you think wins?
Man, I don't know. Look, who's going to play quarterback? Is Alex Smith going to be? I mean, who's their third string quarter? Oh, is it Colt McCoy?
No longer
Colt
Dwayne.
McCoy's for the Giants. Yeah,
it's no longer Dwayne Haskins. It's Taylor Heineke. So
Heineken.
Yeah, apparently.
I like Heineken's.
Yeah,
I might have to bet. That's to go
Jimmy,
with Washington.
That's Jimmy Johnson's beer of choice.
But, God.
But yeah, I mean, it's so hard.
I'm going with the Eagles. I think the Cowboys. Look, if they win, I think just the matchups. Washington's defense is ferocious. That's the thing that concerns me, and they're playing against a rookie quarterback. But I don't think Washington offensively can do enough to put up points, and I think that's going to be the X factor. So I'm going to go with the Eagles. Cowboys, I'm predicting the Cowboys that have been NFC East champions, baby.
I do think it is very interesting to consider if Washington finds themselves a franchise quarterback, whether that's Andy Dalton for a year or whatever, or they are able to draft one and that player works out, that team is really cooking with gas. And for what it's worth, I mean, if Washington loses this game, they're probably drafting somewhere around 10, 11, 12, something like that.
Yeah.
Versus if they win, they're drafting at the very least 19th. It's a lot easier for them to land a franchise quarterback in that 10, 11, 12 range than it is at 19th overall. And so, I know nobody wants to tank, whatever. But if you're looking at that, winning could hurt them more than it could anybody else. You know, people have talked about draft position for the whole season, and it could really, really, really set them back because it could take them out of range to draft a quarterback for the future.
You know what? I'm not going to buy in that. I think that they're going to actually try to play to win this game because it is a division game. I think that theory, I get it. I mean, well, look at Dwayne Haskins. They drafted him at 18, and that didn't work out. So I think they're going to play hard. I think their coach, Ron Rivera, is a tremendous coach. And look, I mean, is there going to really be a difference maker 4 spots or 5 spots if you win or lose? I don't think so because there's only so many quarterbacks in this draft, and we've seen the enigma of that position. So I think that they're going to play hard. And look, I like it. I think there's a lot riding on it. I mean, either one of these teams in the NFC East have a winning record, and yet we're excited about these last 2 games in the division. Yeah, that's pretty cool.
It is pretty cool. It is pretty indicative of 2020.
Let's not even think about the record. Let's just
Well,
the implications are there. That's the good thing about that.
At the end of the day, 2 of these teams are going to be 1-0 in 2021. Let's get the hell out of this year.
Exactly.
Tony, happy New Year to you and your family and everybody. Everybody listening, we hope if we don't talk to you before then that you have a very happy New Year. Enjoy this week's games. Hopefully the Cowboys win. Hopefully the Eagles win. A very strange sentence to say out loud, but it will be a lot of fun. Tony, we'll see everybody next week. Thanks a lot, everybody. This was the 750.